So, hello, everybody. It's Thursday, June 10th. This is our Electus Society book club. We're going to be reviewing the book Never Split the Difference, Negotiating as If Your Life Depended on It with Chris Voss. Again, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show an overview video because, again, some of you may be seeing this as a recording or haven't read the book. Hopefully, this will inspire you to either pick it up or check out some YouTube videos on it. There's you could do it buy the audiobook or buy the actual book and take notes on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you a 7-minute video that I think that did a pretty good job of summarizing it. So give me one moment right now and we'll get started. Okay, share. So you guys should be able to see my screen. I'm going to expand it and we're going to hit play.
I recently read the book Never Split the Difference by author Chris Voss. Several years ago, author Chris Voss was invited to a negotiating class at Harvard. The class instructor asked Chris to conduct a mock negotiation with one of the Harvard students. In this mock negotiation, Chris was selling a product, and his counterpart was given a set budget to buy the product. Chris and the Harvard student went back and forth until they arrived at an agreed price. When the instructor walked up to them and asked, "What was the price you agreed upon?" Chris told her, and she immediately burst out laughing. She said, "Chris, you literally got every dime he had." The instructor was used to seeing her students split the difference between the minimum selling price the seller was given and the max budget the buyer was given. But somehow, author Chris Voss had convinced his negotiating counterpart to willingly offer his entire budget. To see if it was a fluke, the instructor had Chris negotiate a different student the following day. And again, Chris walked away with the maximum amount. These Harvard students knew every cutting-edge negotiating technique in the book. So how did Chris Voss convince them to give him their entire budget? Well, Chris wasn't just some guy off the street. Chris was the lead hostage negotiator for the FBI. And after dozens of high-stakes negotiations with kidnappers around the world, Chris Voss found that the key to getting what he wanted and avoiding compromises and making the other side feel like they were treated fairly was tactical empathy. Tactical empathy is the act of sincerely empathizing with your counterpart's situation and then getting them to empathize with your situation. Let me tell you why demonstrating sincere empathy is critical to negotiation and how giving and receiving empathy is the key to walking away from a negotiation with the best possible price, best possible salary, or the best possible contract while making the other party feel like they were treated fairly. During a psychotherapy session, a psychiatrist will encourage a patient to talk while she listens intensely. Occasionally, the psychiatrist will jump in to help clarify what the patient is saying and feeling. Psychiatrists do this because they know that their patient will be less defensive and less opposed to change if they can make them feel heard. The same principle applies to a negotiation. During a negotiation, your counterpart will be uncomfortable dealing with you and resist your counteroffers until you demonstrate that you understand their world and can empathize with their cares and concerns. A woman in Chris Voss's negotiating workshop learned this the hard way. The woman, who we'll call Susan, was a sales rep for a pharmaceutical company. She was attempting to influence a doctor to replace one of the drugs that he was prescribing to his patients with a drug that she was selling. In the first meeting with the doctor, he was cold and skeptical. He told her that nothing would convince him to replace the drug he was already administering his patients. Although this initial sales pitch was going terrible, Susan started to see how deeply he cared for his patients. When he talked about any one of his patients, his body language and tone of voice was noticeably warmer. Susan pointed it out. "You seem very passionate about treating your patients. I can see how hard you work to tailor specific treatments to each and every patient." The doctor paused and looked at her as if he was seeing her for the first time and said, "That's right. I feel like I'm treating an epidemic that the other doctors are not picking up on, which means that a lot of patients are not getting treated adequately." From that moment on, the doctor let down his guard and was willing to listen to what Susan had to say. When Susan brought up the positive attributes of her product, he listened closely. By the end of the meeting, the doctor said he was open to trying the new medication. He placed an order that day. The magical words that turned around Susan's conversation with the doctor were, "That's right." If you can get your counterpart to say the words, "That's right," then you know you've made them feel heard, and you'll know that they'll be more receptive to any offers and counteroffers that you make from that point forward. Author Chris Voss says, a negotiation doesn't truly start until you hear the words, "That's right." The best way to get your counterpart to say the words, "That's right," is to listen to the emotion behind your counterpart's words. Your goal is to spot some cares and concerns that they have regarding the negotiation, and then summarize those cares and concerns with a concise statement that starts with, "It seems like," or "It sounds like." As in, "It seems like you're really concerned about blank," or "It sounds like blank is really important to you." The beauty of starting your statements with "It seems like," or "It sounds like" is that if you're wrong, you don't damage the conversation, since you can follow up with, "Well, I didn't say that's how it was, it just seems that way." But if your counterpart confirms your summary statement with a "That's right," then it's time to get them to empathize with your situation. Chris Voss says the best way to get someone to empathize with your situation and start thinking of ways in which they can help you is to ask calibrated questions. Calibrated questions are open-ended questions that start with how or what and are calibrated to direct your counterpart's focus towards your problem. They turn a negotiation from a confrontation to a problem-solving session. Chris Voss says the ultimate calibrated question is, how am I supposed to do that? Let's say you're renting an apartment and your landlord tells you that he's going to increase the rent from $1,200 a month to $1,500 a month. The best way to avoid the rent increase and negotiate a lower rent is to empathize with his position and then ask a version of, how am I supposed to do that? You could say, "It seems like you think your apartment is undervalued and you just want a fair market price. But how am I supposed to pay $1,500 a month when I only make enough money to afford $1,200 a month?" The key is to say, "How am I supposed to do that?" in the same way you would say, "I value your intelligence. Can you please help me solve my problem?" At this stage, if you've made your counterpart feel heard, you built rapport with them. And when you ask your counterpart the calibrated question, "How am I supposed to do that?" your counterpart will most likely do one of two things. They'll either come up with a creative solution so that both of you could get what you value most, or they'll raise or lower their initial demand to accommodate you. If they take option 2, but still give you an offer that doesn't meet your needs, you simply respond with a slightly different calibrated question. Back to the rental example, if your landlord reduces his rent to $1,400 a month, you could respond with, "That's very generous of you. That's probably the lowest price you can go, but I'm sorry. I just don't see how I'm supposed to pay $1,400 a month to stay here when I can rent a similar apartment nearby for less than $1,200 a month." This technique of politely countering every offer with some version of, "How am I supposed to do that?" is precisely how Chris Voss got those Harvard students to willingly offer him their entire budget. So the next time you go into a negotiation, empathize with their situation and try to get a "That's right." Then get them to empathize with your situation and ask them to help solve one of your problems by asking a calibrated question like, "How am I supposed to do that?" If you do this, you're on your way to mastering the art of negotiation, which is simply the art of getting someone else to have your way. That was the core message that I gathered from Never Split the Difference. It's a great book on understanding the subtleties of a negotiation. I highly recommend it. If you would like a one-page PDF summary of insights that I gathered from this book, just click the link below and I'd be happy to email it to you. If you already subscribe to the free Productivity Game email newsletter, this PDF is sitting in your inbox.
All right. So that was it. That was the video. And I just want to share with you all what I got from the book. And I think the best thing is the actual title. And when I first got this book, I didn't understand what that really meant, what Never Split the Difference was. And, you know, all the different books that I have read previously, whether it's about persuasion, etc., it's all about like a win-win scenario, right? Understanding that person, using persuading and influencing. But when you're at the level of a FBI hostage negotiator, right? You have a person who actually has 4 hostages, okay? You can't have a win-win situation here where it's like, all right, you get to keep and kill 2 hostages, I get to have 2 hostages, and we both win, right? Like, okay, deal. it doesn't work like that. You can't split the difference. So like that was like taking it to another level. And so, I had to tell you that when I was reading about his chapter on when he was actually dealing with a hostage situation, I was like hooked. Like I couldn't stop reading. I mean, this was as good as like any novel or whatever it is, because this is real. And he's trying to use all these different techniques in order to get them. But there's a lot of things that I want to cover, but I want to open up the floor to each and every one of you to, I'll take just a couple of comments and then I'm going to share some more stuff. But what did you get either from watching the video, or if you've started reading the book, what you got out of it so far? So I'll just offer opportunity to anyone to volunteer. Don't be shy. Just unmute yourself and share. Oh, Leighton, go ahead.
Yes. I felt that split the difference was very good in making a suggestion of double theory for it talked about the heart and the mind, and at that part I really saw it through. I saw it and I said I can work with this book.
Nice. Yeah, I think that it was so interesting what you were saying, Leighton, about the heart and the mind, because in the end, we like to always explain it. And this is something I learned in my philosophy class when I was in college. They basically said there were humans are rational creatures. And my philosopher teacher said, that is BS. We're more like gum chewers because we actually chew gum more often that we're logical and rational. And I love that. And it made me laugh. But that is actually what Chris Voss is really talking about this book, is that we are emotional. There's part of our brains that the mammalian amygdala or whatever is going on in our heads, the reptilian brain that we have, that we can become emotional, unstable, not logical. And so it's like, all right, I'm dealing with a person like this. How the heck am I supposed to get through or persuade? And in level 1 of Electa Society, all of you had actually watched that video about communication and listening, and especially that part with that video about Trevor Noah, where it's like, what does he use and what are the techniques that he uses to actually persuade? And in the end, it's really about taking your level of listening to the next level, right? Which is completely understanding that other person's point of view. Like imagine you're talking with your brother, your sister, your parent. They're emotional. They're upset. Crushed my tomatoes. I have no idea. I'm looking out in my garden. I saw tomatoes, right? So what do you do? How can you reason with that person? Well, the first step is before you need to be before you want that person to understand your point of view, like, don't be upset by the tomatoes. They're just tomatoes, right? That's not going to work. First, that you have to, and this is what Chris Voss in his book says, you have to label it, you have to describe it. I totally understand you're pissed off that the tomatoes are crushed and that I did that. Is that right? Like, yes, and he talks about something called tactical empathy. And I want to repeat it here for all of you. There's a difference between just saying, hey, let me just label it, you're really upset, right? You're angry, right? Those are all superficial emotions that we could say, I can see that, that you're very upset. It seems like that's what they talk about, that you're really angry, you're really frustrated. But tactical empathy takes it up a notch. It's basically saying is not only can I describe what you're feeling and what you're thinking or whatever it is I can actually go into your psyche and say, what are your reasons on why you feel that way? And I think that's actually, he calls it emotional intelligence on steroids. And I think that part of what I have been doing in coaching, for so many years in coaching with people without patting myself on the back so much to be humble about it, it's I really try to listen to what is the person communicating and what they're really trying to communicate, like from that heart center, like this is what's really going on, right? Not just what they're saying, but it's also the things that they're not saying. So, great job, Leon. I love your comment. Leon, what I see your hand up. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts on this book. I think I've seen this book be recommended. I'm kind of into investing and stuff like that.
Yep.
And I think I've seen like, people that are into like sales and stuff like that, like bring this book up. And I just think like with people that live in a capitalist kind of society,
Yeah.
I think it's good to just like learn this. So my comments are just really like, I'm really intrigued
Yeah.
by this. And even in different ways, like we are selling ideas. It's not just like with dollars and currencies, like we're
Mhm.
selling things, people resell and all of that. But like even like we always want to persuade people. And I just think if you really do have a great idea, obviously you want to push it. And so I just think this is a good way to like really learn tactics and little tricks and tips to really be effective in your communication with winning people over.
Yeah.
For whatever cause you have. Hopefully the causes are good.
Well,
Yeah.
exactly, right? The whole logo of Electus Society is meant to represent light. I want each one of you to be, leaders of light, that you're in a dark room. You could have everybody hating on you. You could actually have everyone be angry, upset, be against your opinions. But, you have to be the person that rises above that, right? You have to figure out like how to persuade and influence people, right? Because in the end, so many people get when they're just so fixated on their ideas and they lose their rationality and they're like, I heard this and this is what I believe and these are the people are the problems. It's like, man, how am I the heck am I supposed to influence this person or persuade this person? Step one, totally understand them, right? Totally understand. Now, very important, you don't have to agree with them, right? And I think I said this in my last meeting. I could talk to somebody right now that can say, you know what, uh, you know, I think black people are the worst and all the cause of the problem. Like I could actually, or the opposite. Like I think white people are the most oppressive people, and and I could actually not emotionally react and say, okay, this is what you're saying. This is what you're thinking. Like, how the heck am I supposed to get this person to see a different perspective if I'm not willing to understand that they're angry and upset and this is how they see the world, right? Because the greatest gift, and he says this in this book, and it's in alignment with everything that I have learned, doing my leadership coaching and training with Landmark Worldwide, is that the biggest gift you can ever give to any person, whether it's your mother, whether it's a horrible boss, right? Because I talked to you guys about my experiences, right? And everyone else calls her a bitch, but I get along with her so well. How is that? It's because instead of me judging her, I actually just try to understand her, right? Understand where she's coming from. And then I'm just committed to doing my job as best serves the organization, right? So that's why, even though everyone hates her, how is it that I get along with her? Is it because I'm hiding my true thoughts or feelings? No, like I will speak up. Like she got frustrated because I was challenging her all the time, right? But it's I first went to understand her. So it's a very, very, important aspect. And like you said, Leon, whether it's in business or negotiation or persuasion and stuff like that, if you can learn some of these techniques, such as it seems to me, and then kind of recapturing it, right, and summarizing it, that they'll feel understood, right? The other thing that I think I taught all of you before, when I was telling you guys a story about my wife and how she hated her last job, and I took this communication course, right? A 2-day communication course. I came home. In the past, I was always trying to convince her why she should leave her job and get a new job, and she just like karate blocked me every time I was trying. I'm like, let me help you, right? But the moment that I just said, so I understand you're really upset, and I kept just acknowledging her, and I said, okay, is there anything else? Like, tell me more, because there's an iceberg of emotions right here, right? And as her partner, I don't need to actually convince her on what she needs to do. I just need to listen. And once I could just understand it and acknowledge it and not try to have any agenda, she basically said, once we finished our conversation, like 5 minutes later, she's like, Tim, this is the first time in our entire relationship where I really felt like you truly understand me, right? It's because I went in with the intention to completely understand her, right? With all the new tools that I have. So if you can do that in your business and understand, how the heck did I, in my job when I was working for that leadership society, I became like the number one salesperson, and then I taught a team and they broke sales records that had never been hit before. All I did was teach them how to communicate with people, really understand them, and then prepare, which he talks about in this book, prepare with all the questions and concerns that somebody might have, right? Because if that's all selling is, it's just really about saying, well, I have this concern, I have this concern. Well, that is a legitimate concern. This is what you're concerned about, right? Yes. All right. Let me share with you how we can deal with that. And then they feel appreciated. Then they're more comfortable, and then they're more likely to, buy whatever product or service. So that's the point I want to make. Alexis, I did see your hand up, and I know I was sharing. Is there something else that you wanted to add or share? Alexis?
I just wanted to say how much I enjoyed the book,
Mhm.
and I just really liked how it centered on mindset. We had the training last time that was all about arguing, like you were saying, the video with Trevor Noah, and also like understanding like cognitive dissonance and like when you really can't comprehend what's going on and not getting like frustrated about it. And I just think that this book, it really gave a lot of like nuanced kind of experiences that he had and examples that really gave me like, I don't know, a lot of like aha moments of things that like I do and reactions that I get from people that are based on what I say or what I do that provokes a certain emotion, like a negative emotion, like based on like the example of just not asking someone what did you say and actually repeating what they said, like repeating what you think that they said. I do that a lot of times in my life. I ask people, oh, I'm sorry, what did you say? And like I feel like it does take the conversation in like a weird negative tone. So just little things like that with the book, and it focusing on mindset and just going in with you being as positive as possible. It's going to help you to not get frustrated and lose your track when you're talking. I never really think about things like that when I'm talking, just to like go in with a positive mindset, because it helps both of you guys to not get frustrated and not lose your train of thought in your emotions.
Alexis, what you're talking about, to me, I mean, I almost got goosebumps thinking about it, and I wanted to cover this, and so I'm so glad you brought it up, because we're talking about mindsets. How do you actually go into a meeting or presentation? How you are thinking and feeling will determine the outcome of that meeting. So you actually have a positive mindset and you actually notice how things change, right? But you've noticed that when people come ready for battle, what are they focusing on? Okay, battle. So that, guess what happens? More battle. So I'm going to read something. This is on page 52.
Wait, it's not.
Go ahead. All right, that was just an accident. All right, so here's page 52. This was a story about a cop, or like this. Hey, Emma, your yeah, there we go. Okay, just as if a correction officer approaches an inmate expecting him to resist, he often will. But if he approaches exuding calm, the inmate will much more likely be peaceful. Like, wow, like that's actually profound. So this goes back to what everything that we've been talking about before. When I did my executive level leadership and with Landmark Worldwide, they talk about how you get to create a possibility in any given second, in any given moment, right? So they call it like, who I am is the possibility of XYZ, right? Let me give you an example. Who I am is love, right? And if you go into a room and you're saying, I am love, right? What's going to happen? Okay. That possibility is a way of being, a way of thinking, a way of feeling, and it becomes almost like a mist that enters a room. And they say it's, and he even says it here, it's like this almost sounds like wizardry, right? Like this is like so unbelievable, but it works. That if you are just concentrating on that intention, what's going to happen is, imagine this like love permeating the hair of the whole air in the whole room like a mist. And so suddenly you will start to feel love and connection with the person sitting next to you. That person and that another person might feel love and connection with you. And let's just say those two people in the room may not even be connecting with you at all, but they may be feeling love and connection with each other. So, and based on all the different spiritual things we've talked about, we said that affirmations, the I am presence, some people believe that it's calling upon the God within themselves to help create that, right? So again, I don't disrespect any faith, but to me, it's the power of your mindset, the power of your feeling, using your gut, and what do you want to create in any given moment. And I've just seen it work. I'll tell you this story, and if it's worth repeating, I really worked on my relationship with my wife, and I shared with you all the stuff that I had done in the past, and I've gone to all the therapy and understood why I did all that stuff. But 2 years after all that stuff, where I confessed, I'm like, this is what I did. I'm sorry. I owned up to my crap, right? And we're working through it, going to marriage counsels and everything like that. One day, I just kept thinking, like, she started attacking me. Tim, you did this to me. You did this to me, this to me. And what is my natural reaction? If you were in that same situation, when someone's attacking you, all you want to do is defend yourself, right? It's either fight or flight, right? You run away, or you or throw up a shield, or you attack, right? So what did I do? I called upon myself, my higher self. I created the possibility. Tim, who do you want to be at this moment right now? Like, what are you trying to create? And at that moment, I said, who I am is the possibility of love, right? But I'm frustrated because she's, yelling at me. And that's all that I can think about. I didn't think about what I was going to say, how I was going to say it. I didn't prepare a speech. I just like, who I am is love right now. And that love actually meant love for myself, to not be actually disrespected, right? And so I remember telling her, I said, Michelle, and I said, and I kept having that tension, who I am is love. Please don't disrespect all the great work that I have done for our relationship by bringing this stuff up. I've done this, I've done therapy, I'm committed to doing this, right? And what was so shocking was her reaction, right? Just at that moment, all because of that intention, she quieted down, she understood, she accepted, right? So again, I go back to this idea where you don't have to be a doormat, you don't have to be run over by people, you don't have to be verbally attacked. I want to each develop the spirit with each and every one of you, to have the emotional intelligence, the strength to be in any given situation. And whether it's this book or anything, who do you want to be at that given moment? And guess what? You guys are very powerful people. You can create that environment, right? And you don't have to have all the words. You don't have to have a whole speech. It's just like, it's your shortcut to say, what kind of outcome do I want to have here? What do I want to focus on? And if you have that in intention, the words will come out, and miracles will happen. All right. So I know I've talked a lot. What are your thoughts based on what I'm picking up? Does this resonate with any of you? Do you have any, what are you getting from what I'm sharing?
I already shared. Oh, sorry, God.
Go ahead, Alexis. What were you saying?
Me, I was just saying, I already shared. I want to give someone else a chance.
No, but all right, well, you share, you know.
But I definitely believe that everything that you're saying, it makes a lot of sense, and it goes along with the whole mindset.
Yeah.
It really goes along with that, and it really just goes along with going into things positively, and just knowing that that's the best way to get the best outcome out of whatever situation that you're in. It's just hard to always remember that when you're going into things. That's why it's so good, all the other practices that we do, like the 3 habits in the morning for success and things like that, are all important reminders and all important tools to help center us back to that mindset, back to knowing that we have to go into things positively, because that's the only way we're going to accomplish anything. That's also the only way we'll allow others to accomplish things with us.
Absolutely.
To collaborate, yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing that. Go ahead, Leon.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I guess one thing I realized, I guess I've unearthed it. It was kind of unspoken, but spoken at the same time. But like this whole idea of like really, I guess, being the bigger person, because you did mention like you had to take ownership in some sense. Like you explained the whole situation with the CO, correctional officer, and the I guess the prisoner, and how really like their mindset can change the outcome. You know, like I guess he could decide to make whatever decision, and it really does change the outcome. Even though that person is going to act a certain way, you can still, your action can trigger somebody's reaction. And so I guess there's a lot of ownership there on, I guess, you trying to be a more effective kind of person. So that was just something I recognized that was a bit unspoken, that you can kind of control the environment.
Yeah, I mean, that's a powerful theme, you know, Leon. It's like, guess what? All I can control is what I say and what I do, right? But now let's go above that. You get to actually control your thoughts, and your thoughts actually change the way you speak and change what you do, right? So it's next level stuff. So that's what I want each and every one of you to develop. So I wanted to share with you some other things that I got from the book, and that when I was reading about this, it reminded me of a docu-series, right? A dramatic docu-series. I don't know, does anybody have ever seen it? It was on Netflix, I believe. It was called Waco. Did you guys see it? Anybody see that? All right. So I'll tell you a little bit about it. Waco, Texas. All right. There was a famous religious leader by the name of David Koresh. Okay. This guy like knew the Bible in and out and was like a spiritual religious leader and had this little compound in Texas. I think it's like a 6-part docu series. It is so good that I highly recommend that you guys watch it. And not because it's just very fascinating, it's a very important and part of our American history, because what came out of that was, oh my gosh, we are terrible at negotiation, right? This thing, I think it lasted over 50 days. We ended up the tobacco and firearms division was responsible, because they had the collected weapons. It was like a little compound, and it was like a standoff. And the reason why I want you to all see it is because they actually brought in an FBI negotiator, right? And he was actually making progress, communicating with them, actually getting some hostages and families out. But it breaks your heart, because what you see is the egos of some of the other people in the FBI, the other people in the fire and tobacco arms and stuff like that. And they just had enough. They're not going to let this compound and the news cameras let them what to do. They're going to charge. We're in charge. And it just results in a very horrible tragedy. So again, I recommend you see it, because look at what the FBI negotiator does. He knows, like, how am I going to convince and persuade people? And some of the tactics that you'll learn in this book are actually shown, but the best and the best part is that empathy, right? Actually understanding, actually listening to them. If they don't trust me, let me get somebody that that person does trust, so that we can actually, get some peace and resolution. So that's why lobbying is something that's so important in politics. Is, hey, I may not listen to you, but what if I can actually know somebody who has a relationship with you? Maybe you could actually let your guard down and talk to that person, and so that I could actually persuade and influence. People are paid a big money. Like if they have a senator who had a friend from high school or college, and that person reaches out to them, hey, I'm working with this other group. Can we meet up? I want to share it. Of course, I'll let you right in. And they're just that's just used to get in the door, just so that they can talk to them and persuade and influence them. So again, it's not bad, wrong. It's just what people use. But I'm trying to educate all of you so that you know the techniques, so that you know what to do to persuade when it comes to the good causes, not just some pharmaceutical trying to sell some money to something, like that. Right. Hey, Leon, you're going to say something, or you just agree?
Yeah, I'm just agreeing. Yeah, I think, yeah, because everybody's persuading, and I feel as if there's a good amount of good people in this world.
Yeah.
And there are also good ideas to be pushed as well. So we just need to outdo the people that have the bad ideas, and persuade for the better ones.
Exactly. So another thing that I wanted to share with you that's in the book, framing and pain aversion. Okay, framing is very important, right? So what that part in the book was all about, when people are given a choice, right, of what this and this is, it may be very difficult, but if you actually frame the conversation, it may make them more likely to choose one over the other. And the only example that I could really talk about this is, one of the things that I do is I love speaking, right? I love doing trainings. I'm actually working with several of you to do some speaking engagements on your campus, right? Or via Zoom is what I mean to say, whether it's student government training, some of the trainings that you've all been through, and others, right? And so when it comes time to like talking about, well, Tim, how much do you charge? One of the things, I don't always do this, but it actually frames the conversation. If I just tell them what my speaking fee is, they might just say, whoa, that's a lot of money, right? But what if I actually framed it and I anchored it to say, do you know how much it costs to bring in a guest speaker or celebrity speaker or anything like that? You could end up paying $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 just for one guest appearance of that person, of them talking about whatever subject that they want. I come in and I'm going to help teach your students specific action steps so that they can be more successful leaders. And I charge a fee of just $3,000, right? But I'm also open and flexible with what your budget if you need a discount. Like, so do you see how I just framed that? That seemed much more reasonable, and in giving that whole context, as if I just basically said, yo, I'm $3,000. Whoa, that's a lot of money. I don't have $3,000. Leon, what were you going to say?
Yeah, one thing I like, what I've realized is that like choices will be choices, and like I don't know, like you gave a great boundary. There are still boundaries there, but you've widened the boundaries enough to still have that person think about it more, instead of like you just saying 3,000 and that's it. Like there's boundaries to like really like speak and have wiggle room, for just being reasonable. So yeah,
Exactly.
that's
Right.
great.
No, thank you. And just think about that. That's used, that technique and that framing is used all the time when you guys go shopping, right? What happens when you guys go and see the rack on the, oh my God, this jacket costs $500. It got a 50% discount. Oh my gosh, $200. We got a $250. We got to get this now. This is a steal. Knowing that this jacket is worth $30 to make, but it's the psychology of it and everything like that. So important thing to do. The second thing that I wanted to mention was pain aversion. Oh, this is very powerful. So one of the things that I'll just speak with my daytime job when I'm not doing this, what I love to do, right? I'm actually trying to save schools, businesses money. And one of the things in my next presentation, which I'm going to be talking about personal finance and having an abundance mindset and telling you stories and stuff like that. One of the solutions that I have that I've been promoting to people is one of these services called bill negotiation, where you like hire somebody to negotiate your bills for you. They know what to say and how to say it. And if they save you money, you pay them, right? Just a little fee, right? But if you don't have to pay anything, right? If they don't save you money, you don't save money. Yeah, it's amazing, this stuff out there, but you guys don't know about it. But I'm happy to educate you guys and offer those resources to you. But do you know how hard it is to get people to do this? I'm like, we can save you money, right? But guess what? Chris Voss talks about pain aversion, and Tony Robbins talks about this. The idea of saving money doesn't really get people that excited, right? Oh, I have to do some work. I have to give you a copy of my bill. That sounds like a lot of work to save some money. Like, I'm good, like I'm busy and stuff like that. However, people are more motivated by pain than by pleasure, right? So the language that you use is, do you know right now with your telephone bill that you may be being overcharged and paying a lot more money compared to another person just like you with that same plan, and they're paying much less? You're like, what? What's the injustice? Like, what's going on with that? Yeah, you're being overcharged. That's painful. That's more hurtful. If you want to stop that and stop being overcharged, come, let's use this service, right? So it's like, wow, that actually will result in more action and more activity because people don't like the pain. And this goes back to leadership, right? How many times I remember during our Electus Level 1 where we had SGA members and stuff like that, or whether you're in clubs or organization, like, oh my gosh, this person's so terrible, we want to impeach them, and now they don't want to be impeached, like all this other kind of stuff. Well, guess what? You were trying and saying, well, Tim, I did everything. I tried to convince them. I was nice about that. I told them what I needed to do. But guess what? What most people don't do is the consequences. I have a partner right now. You know, we're dealing with a situation right now. I'm teaching him how to have managerial skills. Listen, when you need a threat, all right, for people to understand the pain that is going to come along if you don't do what you need to do. So have that expectation. The consequences is you're going to be dismissed from this position. You're going to have to resign. Do you agree to that? Right? Nobody's really tells people the consequences. So what ends up happening, nice people get taken advantage of. Like, I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to threaten. But guess what? You have to speak up. You have to threaten, because otherwise you have to tap into, I'm doing a disservice to you as a leader of an organization, allowing you to engage in this behavior that you actually think you have a title in this board and you're not doing the bare minimum. You're not even answering my emails and stuff like that. This is acceptable. We're hurting the organization, right? It's not fair to you to actually think that you could put this on your resume and think that you've done a good job. Like, no, like, I have an obligation for you, right? This is how I viewed it with my employees. So I have to stand up. I have to actually say, this is the acceptable behavior. Are you going to commit to that? Yes. Boom. They mess up, right? So you messed up. You made this commitment. You said you were going to do it. All right. I've already given you a verbal warning. Now here's my other warning, and I'm going to put it in writing, or I'm going to CC the advisors and say, if you do this again, you may have to be, you will be dismissed from this position. Do you understand why? And then it's a negotiation, right? Then the third time, now they know they're up for trouble. So maybe they might do it halfway. You know what? So give them another chance, but you say, hey, again, this is the expectation. This is clear. 9 times out of 10, people, when you hold them to a high expectation, if they know that there's pain, if they know that there's consequences, guess what? They're going to step up, right? And even if they don't step up and you say, okay, you haven't done it, we've tried it, we've discussed it, we wrote it, we informed our advisor, we all know the plan, you got to step down. they're going to like, all right, I got to step down. Yeah, let's find somebody else, right? I don't have the time. I don't have to do it. Or if they're, you know what, if they're like, no, I don't want to go, you may have to fire them and have those difficult conversations, but they're not going to, they just don't want to quit because of they want to save face, right? But then you're just going to have to do it for them. Get your advisor, get everybody on board, inform them, but they're more likely to accept that decision because you did all this stuff in the beginning, but you also threatened them that they know what the consequences are. Leighton, I know you've had your hand raised. I apologize. I just wanted to, finish that point, but go ahead. What are your thoughts?
Everything you're saying makes me feel like saying persuasion is leadership.
Yes, it's exactly that. Persuasion, leadership is persuasion is in the definition of leadership, right? What is leadership? It's influencing or persuading others for a common cause, goal, or purpose. Leadership is persuading or influencing others for a common cause, goal, or purpose. Do you know that I went to every single leadership retreat at my City University of New York college, Queens College, and I went to every different leadership conference, and they made you seem that leadership was all about values and leading by example. They talked about ways of being a leader, but no one actually really explained to me the definition of leadership. I had to take courses after I graduated college to say, oh, that's the that's the definition. No one ever told me that, right? So yes, this is all about teaching each and every one of you to be somebody that can influence people, that can persuade people. But some of those things that in order for you to do that, guess what? You have to actually have the secret sauce. And that secret sauce is being humble. Guess what? Every one of you have ideas. They may be wrong. You may be correct from your perspective, but you don't have the perspective of other people. So I can tell you that the views and attitudes that I had in college are not the same attitudes that I have now, right? So as I get older, as I learn more, I'm starting to discover that ancient proverb, which you guys learned in the first training, is humility, and it's one of the values of elective society. It's wisdom is knowing that you don't know anything, right? So it's like I have to understand that I have this view, right? But it may be wrong. Let me listen and actually understand other people's perspective, because as I get older, for many of you, I'm maybe a decade older than many of you, but some of you, are, maybe my age, but um, I have to start realizing that I don't know everything. And the other thing, there's one other thing that I wanted to share with you. Everything is a lot more complicated, right? I like to, I believe that everything should be simple and clear, but things aren't simple and clear. There's different situations, different things. And the more and more I learn is like, wow, everything's much more complex than I originally understood, right? I only knew this narrow viewpoint, but there's a lot more to learn, right? So that's all I can say. Any other thoughts? Hey, Geronimo, I haven't, thanks for jumping on the call. Do you have any other thoughts that you wanted to share based on what we're talking about so far? What are you getting?
No, I mean, I actually think that what you were saying before is really important, regarding humility.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also agree with you. I really think that's essential for all of us to take into account. As young leaders, we need to understand that without that value, we can't keep going in life. We need to acknowledge that. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. I I'm hesitant to say it, but I think it's worth repeating, right? I'm going to tell you guys a quick little story, right? The whole idea of humility and say that you don't always know or listen to a different person perspective. I have several examples that I did a training. I won't mention who it was or what group it was involved with. I am a firm believer in education, right? And what is the thing that we always learned in education is that there are different perspectives and different points of view. And your job in education is to learn both sides of the perspective, right? And so, how can I persuade you? And this is what Chris Voss talks about. If I can't actually get into your mind, getting into your situation and understand your perspective, right? Right now, we're living at a time, I just think about it, I got goosebumps. We want to cancel anybody that disagrees with us, okay? We're in the cancel culture. And it's even worse because everybody's trying to prove how much more woke this person is than this person is, like, and it's like, and it's sad. So when I went to do a training, I said, okay, here are some views, and I'm going to give you the opposite perspective. Guess what happened? They went outraged. The people, how dare you show us that opinion? How dare you? And I'm like, I told you that I don't always agree with this position. They're like, no, they shouldn't have a platform. They shouldn't have a voice. Guess what happens when you silence people, right? When you try to suppress people and freedom of information, then they actually go underground, right? And then it's like underneath the hidden shadows, they start to fester like mold that starts to build up in your basement because you didn't let any light in. And so guess what? It's going to infect all these other people and you're going to get sick. It's better that you actually allow people to actually share their point of views, listen and understand them and say, I understand what you're saying. This is what your perspective is, right? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Okay, I got you. Let me share with you a different perspective, right? Or ask questions. Well, what about this? What about this? And all these techniques that you guys have learned about before, it's like, I never thought about that way. But Chris Voss in this book is the only way for you to persuade these irrational criminals that are holding hostages, is for you to understand them so that they can trust you, that you really empathize with them. Then you can appeal to their logic or their other emotions so that you could save hostages. There are real big problems right now, and we need these issues. So again, what happened to me with that whole presentation? I got blacklisted. They said, Tim, we don't want to have you back. Our members don't resonate with what you're saying. And that's what happened. So listen, this is happening. And listen, I love everybody. Like, I'm not a hateful person, right? But I dared give another opinion to some other group. And I'll say this one last thing is, I know that Jordan Peterson is a very controversial figure, right? He's all over YouTube and stuff like that. Some people love him, some people hate him and stuff like that. I showed you all in level 1 a video about him talking about communication. I was terrified to share it, right? Because I know especially we have people in the LGBTQ communities that, he's taken stance on like pronouns and things like that in Canada. It's like, oh my goodness, like, should I even show this video? And all I could say is, listen, I don't support all the people who I'm showing videos on. And I'm like, should I even show this video? And I remember showing it because to me, I'm still going to keep it in there. And I'm going to tell you why. Because in the end, I can say I don't necessarily agree with any person that I show their video, their politics or their point of views, right? So please don't blame me and say that I'm spreading that hatred or whatever it is, right? But I said, you know what? Listen to the message, even if you disagree with him, even if you don't like him. Elected Society is all about like listening, humble yourself. Can you learn something? And show it, even though you don't agree with it, so that maybe you can learn. I wanted him to speak from the psychology perspective because he was a clinical psychologist for 30 years. So he had to be able to really listen to people. So that's what he did. Guess what happened? I'm not going to mention any names, but I had a student call me and say, how dare you show that video of that person? Don't you know that he's hateful? Blah, 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 blah. And so again, what did I have to do? I had to humble myself. Okay. And let me talk to this student. Let me get that person's perspective. So I talked to the student. I said, what is your thoughts? What do you want? Like, I just don't think you should show that video because it's that individual. Okay. And I said, you know what? I'm going to show other videos that are very critical of him. And I said, the whole point was for you to actually hear that message, right? of that video about listening and communication, right? And I said, you don't have to agree with this politics or point of view. A broken clock can be right twice, okay? Right? If it's broken and it says 8 o'clock, it'll be right at 8 o'clock in the morning and right at 8 p.m. So even your worst enemy could be right about one thing, right? And I said, did you actually listen to what the video said? Did you watch the video? And guess what the student's response was? No, I skimmed it. I just didn't want to hear it. So basically, the whole point was for you to actually, in a video, learn about listening communication, even with your worst enemy. And your mind was so wrapped up in making this person that enemy that you couldn't even listen to the message, right? And so I'm like, oh my goodness, but this is the perfect example, right? If you can't listen to this person that you hate, how are we ever going to, as a society, get anywhere, right? And so I basically said this to him. I said, listen, it was a video that I found that really does a great job summarizing communication and how you should listen to people. If you have another video of a different speaker that has that same components, I'll be willing to consider it. He's like, thank you. I really appreciate that. Yes, I will do it. What ended up happening? Again, I didn't get any other videos. I didn't get any nominations. So I'll keep the video until I find another one, right? But I think that it really goes to show what listening is, understanding people that you disagree with. It goes back to Chris Voss's book about that. So does anybody have any other thoughts or comments based on what I've said so far?
Yes. I enjoyed, I think, hold on. Oh, I think I heard my feedback, but I enjoyed that last tidbit, and I think it's the mark of maturity. This is not me making a claim. The mark of maturity on people's end is to really entertain ideas that are really opposing to you. Like, let me give you a really we're getting controversial here. I'm gonna get a bit controversial.
Let's get controversial. Safe space.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, no, definitely. I'm definitely gonna preface the space. But I remember I had a friend that voted for President Trump. This time, I dislike President Trump. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I've realized your opinions get refined anyway. But I had a friend. I love this dude even before I knew his political stances. And I don't know. I've realized that because he was not an enemy in my head, so I was able to press into a difficult conversation with him at the time.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't even fit the caricature. What was presented about Trump supporters, this and that. But in that whole thing, I realized it's just good to understand people's point of view. That's one of the greatest things I've learned from college is that I have friends that think differently. Even the trigger stuff like the vaccine. I have friends. We had a whole group chat, and it was very civil because we were just mature. I remember talking to somebody last week, this good sister, and she was great. And we were talking about it. And I was like, yo, would you ever have a conversation with a Trump supporter? And she was like, no.
Wow.
And in my head, I was like, that's very immature. Here's why. Here's why it's very immature, right? This is all in my head. Because it's like, if you have better ideas, you should dialogue with these people so that you can persuade them that, yo, that's kind of crazy the way you think. But if you just lead them to their vices, and that's kind of unloving to me, because if you have better ideas, why don't you want people to flourish? If you have better ideas, then share it, debate. And that's why we have, philosophy and really to dialogue with people that are really different, man. I think that's what's absent from the world. And I think sorry, my background. I think that's really absent from the world today.
Yeah.
And that's why people are, just triggered all the time, man. You don't have to take everything serious. We people, we shouldn't always get triggered all the time. So that's something I realized. You have people that will have different opinions, and I have one friend, the same guy, over the years, I explained why I disagree with some of the things and why it was hurtful, because he didn't have a friend like me before to inform him. He was just making his conclusions based on the information he had. And so now we only just don't get information from, books and stuff. We have people's experiences to also contribute to that. And so I was able to be that light to him, and his political views have shifted now where he's I would say politically agnostic because we had that encounter. But if I had nah, bro, you're not my friend no more, this and that, he wouldn't have changed his mind, So that's just kind of the people that are listening on the replay, man, entertain people with different values and different things like that. And you could kind of share if you really think your ideas are great, because we want to have great ideas flourish in the world. We don't want bad ideas to flourish, hate and stuff like that. So Yeah. And one
Well,
last thing
mhm.
I want to share was this I think a really good example of changing people's mind. This is really extreme, but this black dude, he had infiltrated like the KKK, which is the craziest thing. I don't know
I
if
think I
you
know
heard
this
that.
person. I've seen it before.
Yeah, yeah. He infiltrated like the KKK, and then like he started like hanging out with these dudes and kind of started changing their minds or whatever. But that's just like an example, a very extreme example of like really, instead of backing away and like allowing people to be in an echo chamber, it's really press into the difficulty of entertaining ideas that are totally different. Get in their minds, understand like, oh, like you're starting from a false premise. Let me even show you like, yo, your premise is really screwed up, and you need to even rethink the way you think. So that's kind of my little TED talk on that piece. So yeah.
I love your TED talk, Leon. You start off with saying maturity, right? I absolutely agree, right? It shows a degree of emotional intelligence, right? To actually have humility, right? To actually listen to a person's perspective, even though you may not agree with it or disagree with it, right? Um, when I'll bring it back to Chris Voss and his book, he said the most dangerous people for the FBI negotiators are the people who actually make assumptions, right? They think that they're smarter than everybody, they think that they know everything. And he's like, guess what? You don't know. Your job is to actually discover what's going on. You need to find out all the critical information, what he calls the black swan, the 3 to 5 points that if you could figure out this stuff, it would change the whole game. That's why he named his consulting group the Black Swan. It's about finding that information. Now, you're not going to find it if you act smarter or you believe that you're better than people or anything like that. And here was another powerful thing that he said. He basically said that, when we always talk about this, right? And it's an important subject. There's two sides to everybody, right? I've seen it with my mother-in-law, the sweetest lady, she lives in the basement, stuff like that. There's one issue. Oh my goodness. She starts getting angry and starts yelling. I'm like, Senora, because her family's Colombian. I'm like, what happened to you? Like, who's this person? She's like, it just gets me angry, in Spanish and stuff like that. And I'm like, whoa, this is a side I've never seen. Listen, we're all capable of that. We call it their dark side. Some people call it their ego, right? But we always have that. So, my job is part of my mission is to help everybody understand to listen to that the light side of your voice, right? Not the ego, not the person that's trying to protect, to dominate, all that other kind of stuff, but the good voice, right? Not the fears and insecurities. And so, bringing back to this point of what I was trying to talk about before is this. I almost like lost my whole idea and thought about it, but Chris Voss was basically saying when you work as a team, all right, that is what you need in order to solve this hostage negotiation. You can't be the person that thinks that you can listen and you have some amazing skill that, if you could just listen or convince them, they're going to get. He's like, no, everything is teamwork. And if you want to succeed in this hostage negotiation, you have to assume that you can only absorb 7 pieces of data or information. And so a good FBI hostage negotiator has a whole team of people that are listening into this conversation, and you're supporting me and helping me figure out what you need to do. So that just blows my mind. It gives me goosebumps, because if you have a team player, like, let's have a mission, if they're focused on all of us work together, you're going to accomplish great things. But if it's coming from, I'm the person in charge, I have the most skill, I need a lead, you're gonna fail, because you don't have all the answers. I'll tell you this one quick story, and then what happened? Leon, you said a question. You said we were a blank culture, a culture. What do you mean by that, Leon?
You were saying was I missed it. I missed what you were saying. It was about let me see. We are in a blank culture.
Oh, I think I was talking about our culture right now is our culture is
Cancel. I think
cancel
of cancel
culture.
culture.
Yes, it was the
Right.
cancel culture.
Cancel.
Basically, what we're trying to do right now, with good intentions, right? We're always trying to evolve, right? We're always trying to be better than we were yesterday, which that's good, right? But guess what? Part of ourselves, I would call it that ego part, wants to dominate, wants to control other people, right? So even though we discovered that, you know what, it's not good to do this, right? Let's all as a society agree that this is not a good thing, right? What ends up happening is even with those attentions, they can be corrupted, right? That they can say, no, this is, even though like some people are oppressed, guess what? Once they get the power, they start saying you're the oppressors, and then they are killing them. And it's like, wow, this was a good movement to wanted to try to start for peace, and now they're dominating, and now they're trying to control other people because guess what? They're angry and they're full of hate, right? So to me, the cancel culture starts with a good intention, right? Hey, let's live in a society where everyone respects one another and stuff like that. But guess what? Now we don't, that's what it started as, but now it's like, now we're no longer respecting people. Now we're like, we don't care what you have to say. We don't respect you as a person. You're bad. You're evil. I have righteousness on my side. Shut up and be quiet, right? What do you think that causes, right? Let's go back to the analogy of the officer in the prison. If he's coming saying that there's going to fight, that's what there's going to be a fight. I have never seen, like, I see all these testimonies right now, like Leon was talking about, whether the vaccines and stuff like that, and I have a friend who is a writer, and he has a lot of different political perspectives that may be different than my own. And he actually taught a course. He was a professor, an adjunct professor for CUNY, that talked about reason. And so me and my learning is that I thought, emotion is a very powerful thing, right? And emotion, like when you have stories, because when you need to convince somebody, you can actually come from logic or you can come from emotion, and he actually says that, and I have the book, it's on my shelf right now. It's called The Art of Reasoning, and I'm going to read it, and I'm going to take some of those components and probably integrate it into Electus Society. But he says, you know what? Every word that you choose, everything that you say can either instantly give you credibility or not. And using emotional arguments is the weakest form of argument. And that blew my mind. But I'm like, people are emotional creatures. They can respond to emotion. But yes, but when you get up towards the level of government officials, senior executives of institutions, administration, you can't just come with all emotion. Ah, la, la, we're paying too much intuition. Da, 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 like, I'm suffering, that may be true. But the words that you choose, understanding the situation, crafting your words to actually get to them on a logical basis on why this doesn't make the most sense. You need to convince the people, because guess what? That emotion, that yes, a story can be very powerful, but you need that supported by reason, and you need to actually make your case so that some people, that emotion, it shuts them down, right? So yeah, so that was all about cancel culture. But going back to the, I'll finish this point and then I'll open up to any other comments. I was the best salesperson on my team, right? And so I led this division. We had so much success. I told you guys how I was successful, right? So guess what? Now I was confronted with my own ego, right? I wanted to be a better manager. I wanted to be the best manager that there was. And so if I was the best salesman or salesperson, I wanted all my people to be the best salespeople, right? And so what did I do? I let my ego get in control, right? If whatever did worked, that's what I was going to do, and I didn't want to do anything else that was different. And so when I was having problems with team members, I was too concerned with trying to prove myself as being the best manager that, guess what? I didn't let my director, the vice president, help me, right? I'm like, no, I got this. Let me prove myself how great I am, right? Problem persisted, almost to point that that person resulted in my low team performance that one semester because she wasn't performing, right? And I didn't do what I needed to do, and my boss saw it. And then when she confronted me about it, she said, you know what, Tim, I got this feeling because you didn't hit your numbers for your team this season. I think that you didn't want my help. And I'm like, actually, that's 100% true. I was so concerned about proving myself that I rejected your ideas. And so I got my ego got control of me. And so guess what? Let me humble myself, give me your advice, help me help this team member do better and whatever happened. Eventually I started micromanaging her and with her support, and guess what? She ended up leading the team. You know, because that's what happens when you hold people accountable. They either step up, they quit, or they self-select themselves out. And then the last thing I said is, how did my team break sales records? Is because I had a team management style that basically said, hey, here is what kind of like what I taught all of you about stewardship delegation. It's like, what I care about the results, but how you go about doing that is up to you. And so I had to humble myself that says, you know what? I don't know all the answers. This is what really worked well for me, but you do you, right? Do what you think is best, but let me just train you how I would do it, but then it's up to you. So guess what? My team member did things differently, things that I had never thought of, never done, and he incorporated what I did and my techniques and all this stuff. Guess what? He broke the sales record. But if I didn't allow him to actually do what he needed to do, I would have stifled him, right? That was my own management. I was operating from fear, like I can't fail. And so you need to do exactly what I need to say because I need to look good to my bosses and my team. No. I was letting the ego get control. So that's how we did it. So at one point, we didn't think women had the right to vote. So what would happen is you have a bunch of men who are in power that need to actually create a law, pass a law that says women have the right to vote, right? Or the Constitution, whatever it may be. I'm American educated. I still have to learn more about my my history, right? So, but how are you supposed to do that if you're just yelling and protesting and say you're the oppressor, you're not trying to let us vote and stuff like that? Like, you need that persuasion. There's something about it. It says you need to change heart and minds, right? You need both, right? And that's what, to me, Chris Voss's book is about. And what you're talking about, Chris Nificent, is like, if we're going to be leaders and we need to lead movements of whatever it may be, you need to do both of them, right? Heart and mind. And how can we do that unless we're not empathizing, understanding, and education? And I remember talking about it, and I was good friends. You know, right now everybody. When the time at student government, you're like, you need to challenge what the president of the college is. You need to fight. And I'm like, well, I have a different tactic, right? I believe persuade and influence, develop a relationship and agree to disagree and fight when you need to and not fight when you need to. Like, be smart about it, right? And so I developed a good relationship. And as a result, I was able to get more of what I wanted because I was more collaborative, because I had that relationship, right? And so I remember talking with him, and I'll never forget it because you brought it up, Chris Nificent, is about we need education, right? And I said to him, and he was a philosophy professor, and I said, if we had education, all the problems in the world would be solved, right? And he crushed me. He says, well, Tim, in Nazi Germany, the whole population was very educated, yet they went to war and 6 million Jews were died. So maybe it's more than just education. And my mind went, oh my God, it's not just education. Like, there's other things that I don't even know about. Like, he blew my mind. So I think that what we're talking about here, I agree that we need education, right? So number one, how do I educate somebody, right? In other words, influence or persuade somebody. How do I educate? Number one, they have to be open. They have to be willing to listen. And you're not going to get them to listen and be educated if you don't understand them, if you don't hear them or empathize with them or understand where they come from. It's like, and I always use this analogy, and I remember writing about this. It's like, right now, everybody tries to convince other people, oh my gosh, you should do this and you should do this. And everybody wants to tell everybody, but people are like bottles of soda. They have their cap on tight. So you keep trying to pour water on the people like, I'm going to fill you with this education. But guess what? You didn't ask them if they were open. You didn't do it. But first, you have to open up that bottle cap so that you can actually pour in that water, right? So what does it take? It takes first you to be humble that maybe what you have in this water may not be right. Maybe they are, but at least understanding each other that and having them release that bottle cap is what's going to allow that education to happen, right? So just a very, very important. And I'll just tell you the techniques that I implement or I use when I actually try to persuade somebody or whether I'm actually in a difficult meeting. Of course, I'm always trying to understand what are their concerns, what are their questions. I repeat it back that to them. They got it, right? Now that they got it, they feel heard. That's what he was talking about. It seems to me you're like ba 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 ba, right? They're like, yes, that's right. Now you come a critical point where you just want to give them information and absorb it. I don't want to waste my time persuading you if you're already closed off. So in my sales meetings or whatever I would happen, I said, okay, now that you've been validated, now that you understand your concerns, your objections, can I please share with you something that I think would be able to help with that? I ask for permission to even share my idea. And guess what ends up happening? Sometimes they say, yes, all right, please tell me with me. Like I'm open, right? Other times it's no, I already made my decision. Okay, I don't want to talk about it. All right. So either they're open or they're not. So I saved a bunch of time. But what if there's an in between? What if they're like, okay, fine, tell me anyway, right? It's that in between. But guess what? They still allowed me to share their opinion. So deep part of them has that little openness. And at least that is better than nothing at all, right? And so many times that happened, even in my relationships with my stepsister, right? Where I wanted to talk to her about her relationships, and I wanted to share some advice. And I asked her, like, "Can I share you advice?" She's like, "No, I don't want to hear it." So I didn't say anything. And then there was another time that came up, and I said, "Hey, can I share with you something that I think might be able to help?" And she went, "Okay, fine," like that. And I said, "No, Jen, like, I'm not going to share it with you if you're really open. Like, if not, then I don't want to share with you. Just only if you're interested. I'm not going to just give you something." And she's like, "No, okay, fine. Tell me, what is it?" Right. And then I told her, and she's like, "Okay, no, that's a fair point. That's a good point that you made." She was now open. The bottle cap was open. And so that's what it's all about with the hostage negotiation with the people is like sales persuasion. It's all goes back to that. So, all right. So it's 5 minutes till 6:30. So we can wrap this up. Does anybody have any final comments or thoughts? Or I don't know if you had a chance to speak. I wanted to get your feedback if there's anything else that you want to add or what you're picking up from this.
Yeah, I thought that everyone, what they were sharing today was really interesting, even from the beginning when Leon was talking about like how you can use it in business and like really almost like win the trust that you have with people when you're sharing, and what Leighton said about like its mind and soul, and it's all together. And I thought it was very interesting today. I can't say that it's the first time that I'm hearing that. I also think that it relates a lot to self openness,
Yeah.
and it depends on the people themselves. Like if they want to be open and if they
Yeah.
want to share and if they want to understand. But there is always a way to reach out. And I also think that it relates to personal experience. It's sometimes a lot easier to relate to people that you're standing in front of when you've been through similar experiences. So again, it relates to intellectual openness.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting.
Perfect. Thanks so much for sharing that. And I wanted to add one thing that you shared. It's not only this openness to me, like I loved it, Christopher wrote humility, right? Openness. Third is actually respect. Okay. This is really big. Respect that each person is a soul, right? That they have their thoughts, they have their opinions, and that they're on their own journey. It doesn't mean that you have the right to be abused or taken advantage of, but it's respect. And when you said that, or about being open and people like choosing, I specifically remembered a moment where I was inviting this person to to do this landmark worldwide forum, the landmark forum, and do this course, because this was this 3-day course that's going to help you change your life and transform and figure out what your blind spots are and get ahead. I hope that someday some of you will end up taking that course. I highly recommend it. And I remember sitting down with her, and I remember saying, are you interested? Would you like me to share with you, like, more about this course, or more about this on how this can benefit you? She's like, no, 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 no. And guess what happened? I was trained by some other people, like, no, you need to push people. You need to get people, if they're going to have this life transformation. And I'm like, wait a minute. That's, if I'm doing that, it's coming from an ego place. Oh, did I influence this person to take this course or not? And sometimes if you meet people who really love Landmark, they're going to be very pushy, right? And it's just like religion, right? Once you actually, get really inspired and motivated, it's like you want to share it with other people, but you don't force it on other people, right? And so I basically said, you know what? I respect you. If that's fine, thank you for the time. And then I left. And guess what happened? She actually acknowledged it and appreciated it, because what was her mind, her story? Oh, this person's going to try to force me and get me to do this and stuff. Guess what ended up happening? I went back to the back of the room and I said, hey, this person wasn't interested. And they're like, oh, well, maybe this other person might talk with her, or this other woman. And guess what ended up happening? Another person approached, said different things. She felt safe in an environment. She ended up doing the program. And that was just such a powerful lesson for me, that guess what? Sometimes people are not ready. How many times have you guys given advice to people and they reject it, and then suddenly, 6 months, 1 year later, they end up doing that, and you're like, oh my God, I've been telling you that 100 times, right? Like, why didn't you listen to me, right? That's your ego saying, how come? But it's like, sometimes maybe you set a seed, maybe they weren't ready for that moment. But I think respect is something very important. So thanks so much for sharing your feedback. Or Amma, you got the last word. Hey, Amma, you're on mute. We can't hear you. Amma, you there? You have your hand raised. We just want to get your final thoughts. So while we're waiting for Amma, is there anybody else who wanted to share? Any final thoughts? Geronimo?
Yeah, my final thoughts.
Yeah, go ahead, Leon.
Yeah, my final thoughts.
I'm here.
Amma, you here? All right, go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
so I've been listening for long, and then I think that all your lessons, Tim, they are very good. I think this particular one is like a lifelong lesson for me, because sometimes what I've realized in life is you might be having the right things to say, but how you say it doesn't work. And I have had problem with that. So even with my teenage daughter, maybe sometimes the way my wording or the way I speak with emotions, or I don't know how to connect. Like, I'm having issues with that. And so when I was listening to you, I think that this solves a lot of relationship, like communication problems in the world. Like, if you understand somebody, like getting their patience, the humility to go down and say, okay, I agree with you. I understand what you're going through. Like, you use the word emotional intelligence. I like science. So like they seem together, but they are sometimes contradicting, because like intelligence is on logic and emotions doesn't use logic, So this is a new word people use, and even I use, but I think we are not using it in the right direction. So if you want people to understand you, I hate politics. I had so many things, like in life, even with your husband, with your friends, you want people to listen to you. They might not listen, like you said, from the first day, but the way you start it, the way you could connect makes the difference. whether it was good or bad, the way you say it, the way you connect with them, make them feel that you're listening to them or you understand certain things and you bring your part. I think it makes a lot of difference. So this is a great lesson for me, and then I love it.
Oh my God, so beautifully well said, Ama. And I hope that these lessons, you know, that's what something that Orr said earlier, where it's like, we've heard these concepts before, right? But guess what? They're worth repeating, right? Because we need to constantly work ourselves to be better than who we were yesterday, right? If you know, one time out of 10, you know, can actually be rational, calm, and listen to people, and the other 9 times out of 10, you emotionally react and get angry and upset. Well, guess what? We're all in our different paths. If you can actually move that up to be 2 out of 10 or 3 out of 10, then that's a great that a great acknowledgement. So if you can use some of these concepts, Ama, on your daughter, right, then you will become a better parent, right? I'm practicing right now with my animals as we speak. I have 5 fur babies, and you know, they upset me when they pee on a curtain or something like that. And what do I want to do? Get angry and upset? And the times that I've done that, they've attacked or bitten my wife. And so it's like, wow, I really need to master myself and be calm, because what happens when I do have kids? You know, I want them to trust me. I want them to be able to talk without me. I don't want to be that parent that says, oh, I can't say anything. Daddy's going to get angry, you know, and then they don't feel that trust. How else am I going to educate them? So, you know, I hope that that works. Emma, I want to hear some great stories next time when we talk to you. But Leon, you know, we cut you short. I said Emma was the last, but I'm going to give you one last shot, and then we'll close this baby out. Okay?
Yes. I just want to say, guys, if I offended you legit, let's have a conversation. I'm that kind of guy. Remember, I had a difficult conversation. We were in history class this past semester.
Yeah.
And they very much disagreed with me, like my ideas. And I was like, yo, let us have a conversation. Funny enough, when we talked on the phone, and that conversation was the best conversation ever. So if you want to like actually flesh out some things, I don't even think I said anything crazy. But yeah, man, keep loving people, press into hard conversations, and I think that will be the most progressive thing you can do with your time in life. So yeah.
Awesome, Leon. Keep loving people. What way better to end? Thank you, everybody. Love all of you. I'll see you guys next week, where we're going to cover my story about creating a mindset of financial abundance. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Please, if you haven't done so already, finish the last recording that we did on professional success, how to get your, you know, to get promoted and get an increase in your salary. If you haven't done it, absolutely do it. And in order to get credit, you need to fill out the post survey so that I know that you completed it. Then we're good from there. So thank you. Yes, I'm excited, Leon. We look forward to speaking with you next week. All right. Bye, everybody. Have a great night.
Bye, Leon. Bye, Tim. Thank you for everything. Appreciate that. Bye, man.
Bye, Chris.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much for watching this video clip about conscious leadership. If you are committed to helping to create more conscious leaders in this world, that is, leaders with more humility, more integrity, more awareness, that take constructive action, then consider helping us by making a donation. Our goal is to have 600 conscious leaders develop before the end of this year. Currently, as of December 1st, we already have 400 members. And again, with your help, we can grow even further. How can you help us? Simply make a donation. If you visit buymeacoffee.com/Electus Society, you can either choose to give a monthly donation and join, and you get different access to a lot of these different membership benefits, or simply make a one-time donation. Click on the heart support button, choose 1, 3, 5, or type in any amount of coffees. Hit the support button, and you can upload your card information on the secure platform. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and let's continue our mission of building more leaders. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.